Hello and very welcome everyone to this session of the Medieval History Part 5. In today's session, we are going to discuss the topic that will be covered in medieval history. So far, we have talked about Delhi Sultanate, Mughal Empire, and in Turkish and Muslim invaders coming to India. Now, let's read further and see what are the things we can learn from them. So, before we start, the images, text, and other materials used in our presentations are for educational purpose only. We respect the intellectual property rights of the original creators and owners. If you are the owner and have any concerns or issues, please contact us at sathi@iitk.ac.in and we shall remove the same. So now we are going to discuss about the Mughal relations with the other rulers. So let's start and see what we can learn from them. So first one is the Mughal rulers campaigned constantly against rulers who refused to accept their authority. So as soon as Akbar attained the throne, and particularly he removed Bairam Khan and Mahamanga from their post, after that Akbar started a policy and that was distributed in all the neighborhood kings at that time, especially in the Rajput rulers, that if you are with us, then you are okay, then and if you are not, and if you are not accepting our sovereignty, and if you are not adopting the empire of Mughals, then you have to face the attack. So that was the time a lot of kings accepted the sovereignty, but not all of them, as we have an example of that, like Rana Uday Singh and his son Maharana Pratap were not the one who adopted the sovereignty ever in their life. However, when the Mughal grew in power, many other monarchs freely joined them. Rajputs, for example, if I give you an example, then remember always that Bharmal, the king of Ahmed, was the first Rajput ruler who adopted the sovereignty of Akbar, and also he married his daughter to Akbar. That was Harkabai, also named as Mariam Uzzamani. This name was given by Akbar. So there are certain other rulers as well who adopted the sovereignty. The Mughals were able to expand their influence over numerous kings and chieftains by carefully balancing defeating but not humiliating their opponents. And the only exception we have in so far in this situation is Shivaji, but not with Shivaji by Aurangzeb. So Shivaji Maharaj was not particular that kind of person who was made or forced to adopt the defeat by the Mughals. The whole his life, he always humiliated Aurangzeb. The only time we know that was in 1665 when the Treaty of Purandar was signed, and because of that, the Shivaji Maharaj has to be presented in the Agra fort in front of the Aurangzeb, but never apart from that. And even after coming back from Agra, he again won all the forts at that time. So that happened at that particular time. Now let's talk about Mansabdar and Jagirdars. So basic thing that I can tell you is it is a kind of a similar system that we talked in the Ikta system. In the Ikta system, if you remember, that was started by Iltutmish. The particular nobles, generals, and all the other people, they were given the particular land, and apart from that, they were also given particular army, cavalry, so that they will be indulged into some kind of business, and they have no free time to engage in any kind of rebellion or revolt. So same is the situation started by Akbar. Mansabdar or Mansabdari system was started by Akbar in the year 1571. So Mansabdars and Jagirdars, and let's know that what is the difference between them. So as the empire expanded to encompass different regions, the Mughal recruited diverse bodies of people like Iranians, Indian Muslims, Afghans, Rajputs, Marathas, and other groups. And if we talk about them one by one, so there is a thing that Mansabdars are basically, first of all, Mansabdar come from a word called Mansab. Mansab is an Arabic word which means position or rank. And this is the thing that is done because all the type of nobles and army generals and all the top positions in the court are given mansabdari, so that they will be indulged into a business thing or a busy thing. Jagirdari is a different thing. If a person is getting a Jagirdari in place of mansabdar, and if a person is there who is getting mansabdari and Jagirdari as well, then that means that person is also being allotted a land from which he will be collecting the revenue. If a person is becoming mansabdar only, then he will be given salary only. Okay, I hope now the difference is clear in both of them. Those who joined Mughal service were enrolled as mansabdars, an individual who holds a mansab, meaning a position or rank, as I was saying. Remember, mansab is an Arabic word. But this policy, this position of creating the mansabdari was a Mongolian thing. So this idea was taken from Mongolia, but the word is Arabic. The Mughals utilized it to determine rank, income, and military tasks, as I was saying. So that is the system that Akbar started. So do remember that Mansabdari and Jagirdari systems were started during the phase of Akbar. And later the other Mughals after Akbar, they modified it according to their will. Some other things related to it. So the Mansabdar's military obligations obliged him to have a certain number of Sawar or cavalrymen on hand. So Sawar or cavalryman means the forces that have horses. So these are given to the particular Mansabdar so that they can take care of them. Mansabdars receive their salaries or revenue assignments, Jagirs, as I was saying. So if a Mansabdar is getting a salary, then he will be only called a Mansabdar. But if he will be given a land or a Jagir, then he will be also called a Jagirdar. So Zagirs, which were somewhat like Iktas, as I was saying, but unlike Muktis, Mansabdars did not administer Jagirs, as I was saying. So in Ikta system, they were the total sole ruler of their Iktas. Iktadars were the sole ruler of Iktas, but not in case of Mansabdari and Jagirdari. They did not, Mansabdars did not administer Jagirs. Mansabdar either be given salary, and if they will be given Jagirs, then they will be called Jagirdar. Instead, only had rights to collect the revenue, that too by their servants, while Mansabdars themselves served in some other part of the country. So I hope both the points are really clear to all of you now. During Akbar's rule, these Jagirs were carefully appraised such that their income were about equivalent to the Mansabdar's wage. So if a Jagir is given, then whatever is coming from that particular place will be coming as a salary, and that salary will be handed over to the Mansabdar itself. And in that particular salary and that particular revenue, he has to take care of all the cavalries, of all the military persons that are working under him, and along with that, all his personal expenditure as well. Aurangzeb could not control this development, and the peasantry therefore suffered tremendously. So Aurangzeb was the one who was not able to control this thing because of two things. One, the type of religious implications he was imposing on the people. Other than that, the type of revolts and rebellions that he was facing at that time from the friends as well. So because of that, he was not able to control that. However, throughout Aurangzeb's rule, the number of Mansabdars increased dramatically, resulting in a lengthy wait for a Jagir. So, in place of controlling the number of Mansabdars he increased the number of Mansabdars, and that is also became one of the reasons that why the Aurangzeb was not able to control the Mansabdars. And apart from that, a lengthy wait for a Jagir was there. That means particularly that Jagir was not given to any particular person, but the Mansabdari was increasing on the other hand. So the shortage of Jagirdars was witnessed, and whoever got Jagirs, they extracted more revenue than allowed. And that became one of the reasons that peasants were exploited. Because if king is saying that you have to collect only 25% revenue or 30% revenue, and Jagirs are according to them collecting 40% or 50%, and and it is easy to understand that why the peasants are exploited here. Aurangzeb could not control this development, and the peasantry therefore suffered tremendously. So during the time of Aurangzeb, Mansabdari was on its peak but could not be controlled. Let's read further about it. Jabt and Zamidars. First of all, what is Jabt? So Jabt is also called Japti, and Japti is also called as Aine Dehshala. This is a system of collecting the revenue from the land, from the cultivation, and this system was started by Raja Todarmal. He was the revenue minister of Akbar. And Zamidars, we all know. Let's read about them also. So Mughal kings relied on obtaining taxes from rural products, that is peasantry, to fund their government, as I was telling you. And Mughals used a single name, Zamidars, to characterize all mediators whether they were village headmen or strong chieftains who collected taxes for kings. A careful survey was done to evaluate crop yields, and for that purpose, this system was created that is known as Japti system, and it was created from 1580 to 1582. This is the year in which this particular system was created, and it was created by Raja Todramal. On the basis of this data, the tax was fixed. So, if a particular type of land, let's say that there is a land that is named X, and that has a total area. Now, in this particular area, they will examine that for the last 5 years or last 10 years, what was the quantity that we cultivated, and what is the type of quality of soil, and all these things will be evaluated. And on the basis of that, the taxes will be implemented. So under this particular Japti system, the two very famous type of lands are called Polaj and Banjar. So Polaj is the most cultivated one, and Banjar is telling its name itself that a particular land that is not appropriate for cultivation. So each province was divided into revenue circles with its own schedule of revenue rates for individual crops. This revenue system was known as Japt or Japti or Aine Dehshala. However, rebellious Jamidars were present. They challenged the stability of the Mughal Empire from the end of 17th century through peasant revolt. So by the end of 17th century, that means from 1600 to 1700, the peasants and also the zamindars, they became rebellious because this system started failing. So this system was basically started during the time of Akbar, but failed during the time of 17th century, and that is why during 18th century we all see that lot of our Nawabs and Nizams were created. Let's read further. Akbarnama and Aine Akbari, very important, guys. So Akbarnama, a 3-volume history of Akbar reign, was written by Abul Fazl. And basically remember one thing, that there were two brothers, Abul Fazl and Abu Faizi. And if we talk about both of them, so they have done lot of literary works in the court of Akbar. Like Abul Fazl, if we talk about, he was the person who wrote Akbarnama. And what is Aine Akbari then? So Akbarnama is the whole biography of Akbar. And we all know that Akbar was an illiterate king. And so this book was written by Abul Fazl, first of all. Second thing, Aine Akbari is a part of it, and it tells about the administrative works of Akbar during his reign. The first volume focused on Akbar's forefather, that means Babur and Humayun and all that. The second chronicled occurrences during Akbar's rule. So that is another volume, and it basically focuses on Akbar's rule. The third is the Aine Akbari. It deals with Akbar's administration, household, army, the revenues, geography of his empire. It provides rich detail about the traditions and culture of the people living in India. It also got statistical details about crops, yields, prices, wages, and revenues. So it is a kind of a particular documentary of all the things, or particular type of book that tells about each and everything that was particularly at that time prevailing in the Akbar's rule, his administration, prices, and all that. So do remember, this book was written by Abul Fazl, and his brother Faizi was also there in the court of Akbar, and he was famous for translating most of the books at that time. Now let's talk about Akbar's policies. The empire was split into provinces known as subas, which were administered by a subedar who served both political and military roles. So if we compare this suba with today's present India, so suba basically you can call a state in a Indian nation, and subedar can be compared with the chief minister of that state. So I hope this point is clear to all of you. So suba was the province, and subedar was the controller of that suba. Subedar was supported by other officers such as the military paymaster, that is Bakshi, the minister in charge of religious and charitable patronage, Sadr, military commanders, Fauzdars, and the town police commander, Kotwal. So these are some of the other officers at that time that supported the Subedar, as Subedar is the political and military administrator, and under him the Bakshi was there, who is the military paymaster that takes care about the salary of military, and then the religious and charitable patronage, that is Sadar, then the military commander, that is Fauzdar, and the police commander, that is Kotwal. Each province had a financial officer or diwan. So particularly every province has their own diwan also, and the responsibility of diwan is to basically collect the revenues and all that. Now Akbar's nobles commanded large armies and had access to large amount of revenue. So basically this was the time when Akbar's whole kingdom was expanding and lot of revenue was coming, and because of which large amount of revenue was there, and that is why nobles commanded the large army, and they also had an access to the revenue. Akbar's decisions on religion with the ulema, Brahmanas, Jesuit priests who were Roman Catholics and Zoroastrians took place in the Ibadat Khana. So even though Akbar was an illiterate king, so he was very fond of religion and once in his life. And for that purpose, he created Ibadat Khana. And Ibadat Khana was the place at which particularly Akbar started taking the lessons of his own religion and the other religions itself also. So that was the time period around 1575 to 1580, that 1575 to 1580, that Akbar started reading about all the different type of religions at this place, and that is called Ibadat Khana. He understood the religious professors who focused on ritual and theology were frequently bigots. Their doctrines caused discord and dissension among his subjects. So basically when he was learning about different type of religions, so he also started asking a lot of questions and all that. So because of which there were some type of discords and dissension between among his subjects. This eventually developed to Akbar's concept of Sule Kul or universal peace. So after learning all the religions and what they are saying, Akbar came to a conclusion that it is our responsibility to create a universal peace, and that is why he adopted the concept of Suleh Kul. Abul Fazl helped Akbar in framing a vision of governance around this idea of Suleh Kul. So Abul Fazl also helped him in particularly creating that how we can create this Suleh Kul in our country. This principle of governance was followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan as well. So that was Akbar, and these are some of his policies that were started by him. Let's read further. Some other policies. Organization of trade and commerce. Really important, guys. You have to understand this thing also. So the Mughals prioritized roads and sarais, which facilitated communication at the point of entry into the empire. Goods were subject to a uniform tax. Rahadari, a transit duty, a toll, or road cesses was declared illegal, though some local rajas continued to collect it. So basically, when we talk about the Mughals, so they prioritized the roads and sarais. Sarais were basically started by Sher Shah Suri and were adopted by Akbar as well. And these particular places are helping in communication purpose, first of all. And at the point of the entry into the empire, goods were subjected to a uniform tax. It is a kind of a thing that in today's world, if we import something into our country, then custom duty occurs, and that is the same tax that you can see here. When anything enters into the empire, a uniform tax was there on that. Then rahadari, a transit duty, a toll, and a road cess was declared illegal. So when some of the people has to go into different kingdoms in the neighborhood kingdoms, so they have to pay the road tax, but they were particularly declared illegal by the Mughal Empire. But still some raja, particularly some kings, continued to collect it illegally. The Mughals introduced high purity silver rupees, which became a standard coin in India and abroad, aiding in the growth of India's trade. So that was another thing that was introduced by Mughals. But if I like to tell you one more thing here, so Sher Shah Suri was famously known as the father of modern currency. Remember that. And he started two type of rupees, two type of currencies. One is rupiah, another one is dam, and that were continued by Akbar as well. The only thing is that more high purity silver rupees were introduced. So do remember that rupiah was the word that was introduced by Sher Shah Suri and not Akbar. Okay, and that became standard coin in India, and later also the same word was used. That is why Sher Shah Suri was famously known as the father of modern currency in our country. Mughals also implemented policies that aided in the commercialization of the economy and the development of a money economy. So a lot of different other type of policies were implemented by Mughals so that the economy and the development of money can be done in this country as well as in the neighboring countries, like China and other states are doing in terms of token currency and other. So Mughals also implemented that. So these are some of the trade and commerce policies of Akbar. Let's read further about it. So during the Mughal era, the salaries of the standing army and many administrative personnel, except the nobles, were paid in cash. I already told you earlier in Delhi Sultanate that paying in cash the salaries of army was started by Alauddin Khilji. Remember that. And furthermore, the land revenue was assessed and required to be paid in cash under the Japti system, also known as Aine Dehshala. So remember that the taxes were also being collected in the form of cash. And these two policies were earlier introduced by Alauddin Khilji. I already told you. That is why he also established Diwan-e Mushtaq Raj at that time. Another one is the small townships grew in popularity as rural grain markets expanded, or kasbas. They were called kasbas. Nobles demanded for all type of luxury goods resulted in the expansion of handicraft production as well as the growth of towns. So as the during the time of Mughals, as the things were being stabilized, the economy was stabilized. So basically the townships were also being expanded and they were famously known as kasbas. And nobles who were working in the court, they also wanted to have the luxury goods and items. So that is why it also made a demand in the market that handicraft production should also grow. And that is why in the towns, the handicraft production was also grown. When Ralph Fitch visited India during Akbar's reign, he stated that Agra and Fatehpur Sikri were both larger than London. So this was the statement of Ralph Fitch. Remember that these type of statements can be asked. That Ralph Fitch, who stated that Agra and Fatehpur Sikri were both larger than London, was said by this person during whose reign. So that was done by during Akbar's reign. Always remember that during the time of Akbar, three capitals were there. He transferred into three capitals. First Agra, then Fatehpur Sikri, and then Lahore. Montserrat stated that Lahore was superior to no other city in Europe or Asia. And according to Bernier, Delhi was not much smaller than Paris and Agra was larger than Delhi. So these are some of the statements given by the travelers of that time like Bernier and Montserrat. So these are the things that were being praised by the travelers and other things that we can understand regarding the economy of Akbar's time. Let's read further. Standard of living, pattern of village life, and the masses. So many European traders and travelers visited India during this time period, and some of them left accounts of the country's social and economic condition. In general, they have emphasized India's wealth and prosperity, as well as the ostentatious lifestyle of the ruling classes on the one hand, and the grinding poverty of the ordinary people, peasants, artisans, and laborers on the other. So when we talk about the different type of Europeans, we already have seen that according to their accounts, they have said and they have experienced different things during the Akbar's reign, and they all emphasize that India's wealth and prosperity and the lifestyle that was particularly lived by the ruling class, and on the other side, the peasants, the artisans, and laborers on the other are particularly different. And they are basically going through a lot of poverty and other things, but the ruling class was ruling in a good and wealth and prosperity way. The scanty clothing worn by the common people struck Babar, and peasants and people of low standing go about naked, he observed. So, according to the minutes of Babur, and Babur documented these things. So, when Babur came, so at that time also we know that Lodhis were there, and India was going through a lot of change. Already, uh, Tamur, not very far away, Tamur had invaded India and looted a lot of things, and we are still going through that phase, that trauma. So, particularly, what Babur has saw that a lot of people are going with worn clothes, and other than that. Some people even did not have anything to wear. So that is what Babur observed at that time. And that is because there were a lot of invasions happened at that time. Incomes and wages ultimately determine one's standards of living. It is difficult to calculate the real income of the vast majority of peasants because money is rarely used in village transactions, even at that time. So when they are particularly doing trade in between them, not with the king and other exporting and import, and they are doing in between them, they are easily using the barter system even at that age. So that is why the income or the particular real income of that time of the people cannot be calculated. So these are some of the patterns of the life and the society at that time. Let's read further. The social structure of the village was highly unequal, and Khud caste, who claimed to be village's original settlers, frequently belonged to a single dominant caste or castes. So the society was unequal even at that time, and the people are particularly dominating on the basis of caste even at that time. Not only these castes dominate village society, but they also exploited the other or weaker sections. In turn, they were frequently exploited by zamindars. So a kind of a society was there that the upper caste is exploiting the lower caste, and they were all being exploited by the zamindars. So that was a common thing in that society. A peasant was not evicted from his land in medieval times as long as he paid the land tax. So this is a common thing even during the Britishers' time. As long as you are paying the taxes, the things will not be taken away from you. So peasants will be given the land and they will be keep on working on them. He could also sell his land if he could find a buyer, and the rest of the neighborhood did not object. So this was another rule at that time. His children inherited his land as a matter of right after his death. And that means the hereditary in terms of land was also there. The pattern of his life was determined partly by the seasons and partly by custom and tradition, which included fairs, pilgrimages, ceremonies, and so on. So these are the basic things at that time in the village areas, and the people are living with these type of things. Let's read further. The situation of the landless and some artisans, including the menials, must have been much worse. So basically, the people who are landless and some of the people who are doing a little bit of artisan works were living a worse life at that time. And this was not the thing for peasants who have land and who have the work to do. Resident cultivators, khud kast, had generally larger lands to cultivate, and a small section of them also had many plows and oxen. So they have their own um, cattle who help them in cultivation and their own tools, and particularly they live a good life at that time even because they have large land to cultivate. They could also rent out a portion of their land to ordinary farmer, Muzarian, or on favorable terms. So that is also can be done. This is a kind of a tenant and landlord thing that was a standard thing at that time. These sections and village zamindars could and did invest in agricultural expansion and improvement. So they are also able to do some type of improvements and according to their power and position in the villages. Let's read about the administration of Mughals. Since Mughals hailed from the then Persia, their administrative and political agendas represented the Persian Arabic style. That is a simple thing. After Babur defeated Lodi's successors in the first battle of Panipat along with the Rajput ruler Rana Sanga, he divided the empire into subas, also known as provinces, which I already told you earlier. And the holder of subas were known as subedars. Let's know more about it. When Akbar ascended the throne, he reorganized this administrative and judicial system in a new manner. We already know he started the Mansabdari system. The head of the revenue department was termed Wazir, and he was responsible for managing the Jagirs as well. That Jagir will go to whom and in which way. Mir Bakshi was the title given to the military head. Mir Saman was in charge of the imperial households. For handling the religious matters, a Qazi was appointed in the Mughal court. A wazir or a normal minister from the Mughal court could be assigned as the wakil whose role was to be the naib of the empire. So these are some of the things at that time. Qazi was a common thing. Qazi was even there during the time of Delhi Sultanate. Wazir is the only thing that we see here, and that too given some other responsibilities as well. At the Pargana structure, the two most renowned revenue officers were Kakori and Amil. So these are called the revenue officers, and they are particularly structured in Parganas. I hope you remember Parganas. Parganas are above villages. In the Mughal Empire, a feudalistic system existed, also known as the Mansabdari. Despite economic and commercial prosperity, inequalities were a glaring fact. Poverty existed side by side with the greatest opulence. So when we talk about, first of all, by Mansabdari, so Mansabdari started a kind of a feudal system at that time. Then comes the economic and commercial prosperity. So there were a lot of inequalities we already have seen in earlier slides, and that existed with the greatest opulence. That means that they were prevailing in the society for a very long time. So these were the things happening during the time of Mughals. Let's read more. So at the time of Shah Jahan's reign, highest ranking Mansabdar were nominal, and they are the ones who receive maximum salaries than the others. That is obvious because Mansabdari basically means ranks, and that is the amount of cavalries and horsemen and particularly military infantries will be given, and that is why higher salaries will be given. The scale of revenue collection left very little for investment in tools and supplies in the hands of the primary producers, the peasants and the artisans. So if we talk about the revenue collection, so the primary producers, that are the peasants and artisans, they are left with no particular type of investments and other things other than their tools and other things, basically. So they cannot create any kind of wealth for themselves. As the authority of the Mughal emperor slowly declined, his servants emerged as powerful centers of power in the regions. They constituted new dynasties and held command of provinces like Hyderabad and Awadh, but still were loyal to Mughals. That is why after the death of Aurangzeb and in the 1720s, we saw that Nawab of Awadh, Nawab of Bengal, Nizam of Hyderabad, Nawab of Arcot, all these type of things were created. By the 18th century, the provinces of the empire had consolidated their independent political identities, as I already told you. So this was the map that you can see here, that after the time of Mughal Empire, the particular different type of Nizams and Nawabs and their independent states were created. So that's it in this session, guys. I hope you learned a lot of things regarding the administration, policies, and trade and revenues and other things of the Mughals. I will meet you in the next session in which we will discuss more on this. And till the time we meet, bye bye. Take care, everyone, and see you soon.